First contact and exile. The sleek crystalline ship shuddered as it pierced Earth's atmosphere, its navigation systems failing after the long journey from Centauri Prime. Inside, Lyra and Nova gripped their control panels, their silver skin reflecting the emergency lights that pulsed through the cabin. Impact imminent, Lyra announced, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. Her long fingers danced across the holographic controls, trying to stabilize their descent. Nova, redirect power to the gravitational dampeners. Nova complied silently, her violet eyes focused on the rapidly approaching ground below. Neither of them had expected their exile to end quite like this. As leading researchers in emotional enhancement technology, they had believed they were helping their people. The Centaurian Council had seen it differently. The ship crashed in a remote forest outside Seattle, carving a deep groove into the earth before coming to rest in a clearing. Steam hissed from the ruptured cooling systems as Lyra and Nova emerged, their tall, graceful forms immediately drawing attention from the helicopters that were already converging on their position. Lieutenant James Harrison watched through binoculars from his position at the forest's edge. "Command, we have visual on 2 humanoid entities," he reported into his comm unit. "They appear to be unarmed." Dr. Olivia Martinez stood beside him, her dark eyes wide with fascination. "Their physiological structure is remarkable," she murmured, already taking notes on her tablet. "Nearly human, but with distinct evolutionary adaptations." James signaled his team to move forward, their weapons lowered but ready. As they approached, Lyra and Nova raised their hands in a universal gesture of peace. Their silver skin seemed to shimmer in the morning sunlight, and their lack of hair was offset by intricate patterns that swirled across their scalps. "We seek asylum," Lyra called out in perfect English, their universal translators working flawlessly. "We are scientists, exiled from Centauri Prime for our research." James stepped forward, holstering his weapon. "I'm Lieutenant James Harrison, United Earth Defense Force. This is Dr. Olivia Martinez, our chief cynobiologist. You're currently in a restricted area." Nova's violet eyes met Olivia's brown ones with instant recognition of a fellow scientist. "Our research was deemed dangerous by our people," she explained. "We developed technology to enhance emotional capacity, to bring balance to our logical society." Olivia stepped closer, fascination overwhelming caution. "Your society suppresses emotions. Emotions are seen as primitive, destructive," Lyra replied, her silver features softening as she studied James's compassionate expression. "Our work suggested otherwise. We believed understanding emotions could advance our civilization, not weaken it." James touched his earpiece, listening to new orders. "We need to move you to a secure facility. Dr. Martins will oversee your integration and debriefing." As they were led to waiting vehicles, Lyra and Nova exchanged glances. Their exile had brought them to a world where emotions ran free, where feelings weren't just tolerated but celebrated. Despite their scientific training, neither was prepared for how this would change them. At the facility, they were given quarters that seemed primitive compared to their crystalline cities, but there was a warmth to the space that their home world lacked. Olivia spent hours interviewing them, her enthusiasm for their research matching Nova's own passion for understanding emotional dynamics. James oversaw their security personally, finding himself increasingly intrigued by Lyra's quiet strength and her subtle reactions to Earth's emotional freedom. He noticed how she would pause to watch children playing in the park visible from their window, or how her fingers would linger on the petals of flowers in the facility's garden. "Your world is chaotic," Lyra told him one evening as they walked the facility's grounds. "But there's a beauty in that chaos we never understood on Centauri Prime." James smiled, watching how the sunset painted her silver skin in shades of gold. "Chaos and order, emotion and logic. Maybe they're not as opposed as your people think." As night fell over their first day on Earth, Lyra and Nova lay in their separate rooms, each processing the strange new feelings stirring within them. Their exile had been meant as punishment, but perhaps it would prove to be something else entirely. A journey not just across space, but into the very hearts they had been taught to ignore. In his office, James filed his daily report, trying to maintain professional detachment as he described Lyra's increasing emotional awareness. Down the hall, Olivia sat in her lab, reviewing her notes on Nova's descriptions of Centaurian society, wondering if science alone could explain the connection she felt to these visitors from the stars. None of them knew that far above Earth, the Centaurian Council was already plotting to retrieve their wayward scientists, viewing their emotional awakening as a threat that needed to be contained before it could spread. The peace they had found would soon be tested in ways none of them could imagine. Understanding emotions. 3 months into their stay on Earth, Lyra found herself standing in the facility's botanical garden, mesmerized by a monarch butterfly landing on a bright orange marigold. Such a simple thing. An insect attracted to a flower, yet it stirred something deep within her that she couldn't explain with scientific precision. Beautiful, isn't it? Lieutenant James Harrison's voice came from behind her. He had taken to joining her during her morning observations, something that made her heart rate increase in a way that both puzzled and intrigued her. On Centauri Prime, we engineered our ecosystem for maximum efficiency, Lyra replied, turning to face him. Beauty was never a consideration. She paused, watching his expression. I find myself questioning that choice more each day. In the research lab across the facility, Nova worked alongside Dr. Olivia Martinez, analyzing the emotional enhancement technology they had brought from their home world. Their fingers brushed as they both reached for the same data crystal, sending an unexpected shiver through Nova's body. Sorry, Olivia said, quickly withdrawing her hand. But Nova caught the slight flush in her cheeks, a physiological response that fascinated her on multiple levels. These reactions, Nova mused, we were taught they were signs of weakness, distractions from pure logical thought. Yet I find they enhance my understanding rather than diminish it. Olivia set down her tablet, giving Nova her full attention. Can you explain what you mean? When I feel something, excitement over a discovery, curiosity about a new idea, even this, Nova gestured between them, struggling to find the right words. This awareness of your presence, it doesn't cloud my judgment. It drives me to look deeper, to question more thoroughly. The days fell into a rhythm, but one very different from the rigid structure of their life on Centauri Prime. Lyra found herself looking forward to her conversations with James, each one revealing new aspects of human emotion she had never understood before. She learned about humor, watching his eyes crinkle when he laughed at his own jokes. She discovered anticipation, feeling her pulse quicken whenever she heard his footsteps approaching. James, for his part, was fascinated by Lyra's gradual emotional awakening. He watched her discover music, saw her close her eyes, and sway to classical violin pieces in the facility's common room. He noticed how she began to use more expressive language, moving beyond pure technical descriptions to include words like wonderful and touching. You're changing, he told her one evening as they watched the sunset from the facility's roof. Both of you are. Lyra touched her chest, feeling her heart beating beneath her silver skin. Is that concerning to you? No, James smiled, cautiously reaching out to take her hand. It's extraordinary. In the lab, Nova and Olivia's research was yielding unexpected results. Their analysis of the emotional enhancement technology revealed that it didn't create emotions. It simply allowed for their natural expression. The implications were staggering. Your people aren't emotionless, Olivia explained excitedly, pacing the lab. You've just been suppressing your natural emotional capacity for generations. The technology you developed, it's more like removing a block than adding something new. Nova sat back in her chair, processing this revelation. That would explain why the Council was so threatened by our research. It challenges the very foundation of our society's structure. But as their understanding of emotions deepened, so did the complexity of their situations. Lyra found herself struggling with jealousy when she saw James speaking with other female officers. Nova experienced her first bout of fear when she realized how deeply she had come to care for Olivia's safety and happiness. These new emotions weren't always pleasant. Both sisters experienced their first real argument, their raised voices echoing through the facility's corridors as they debated whether James and Olivia found them later, each in their respective sanctuaries. Lyra in the garden, Nova in the lab. The humans had learned that sometimes the best response to emotional turmoil was simply presence, sitting quietly with the sisters as they processed these new feelings. As the sun set on another day on Earth, Lyra stood at her window, watching the stars emerge. James stepped up beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "I never understood why humans looked at stars for inspiration," she said softly. "On Centauri Prime, they were simply navigation points, astronomical objects to be studied. But now," she turned to face him, her silver features softened by starlight. "Now I think I'm beginning to understand." The moment hung between them, charged with possibility. But before either could act on the feelings growing between them, an alarm blared through the facility. On their monitors, multiple objects were entering Earth's atmosphere at high speed. The Centaurian Council had made its move. The time for emotional exploration was over. Now they would have to fight for their right to feel it all. Threats from above. The Centaurian ships descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars, their crystalline hulls reflecting the morning sunlight. Inside the facility, chaos erupted as alarms blared and personnel rushed to battle stations. Lieutenant James Harrison sprinted down the corridor, his heart pounding not just from exertion, but from fear for Lyra's safety. He found her in the command center with Nova, both sisters staring at the tactical displays with expressions he had never seen on their silver features before. Pure, undiluted fear mixed with determination. "Those are enforcement vessels," Lyra explained, her voice tight. "The Council's elite guard. They're not here to negotiate." Dr. Olivia Martinez burst into the room, clutching the data tablet. "The emotional enhancement research. We need to secure it. If they get their hands on our findings about natural emotional capacity in Centaurians, they'll destroy it," Nova finished, reaching for Olivia's hand instinctively. "Along with anyone who knows the truth." James activated the facility's defense protocols, watching as blast shields descended over the windows. "How many ships are we looking at?" "3 capital ships, each carrying approximately 50 warriors," Lyra answered, her training allowing her to analyze the threat even as her newly awakened emotions screamed at her to run. "They're armed with neural disruptors, weapons designed to incapacitate without killing. The Council will want to take us back alive." The first impact shook the building. Above them, the Centaurian ships had begun their initial assault, testing Earth's defenses. James watched as surface-to-air missiles launched from hidden silos around the facility, only to be deflected by crystalline force fields. "We need a plan," he said, turning to Lyra. "Your people's technology is far advanced beyond ours. How do we fight them?" Lyra and Nova exchanged glances, years of scientific knowledge passing between them in an instant. "Their ships," Nova began slowly. "They're powered by emotional suppression fields, the same technology that's kept our people controlled for generations. If we could reverse the polarity of our enhancement device, we could overload their systems," Olivia finished excitedly. "Force them to feel everything they've been suppressing." The building shook again, harder this time. Through the windows, they could see Centaurian warriors descending from their ships, their armor gleaming like liquid mercury. James began issuing orders through his comm unit, directing defense forces to key positions. "We'll need time to modify the device," Nova said, already moving toward the lab with Olivia close behind. "And we'll need to be close enough to their ships for it to work." "I'll buy you that time," James promised, checking his weapon. He turned to Lyra, wanting to say so much but finding words inadequate. "Come with me. I need someone who knows Centaurian tactics." The next hours passed in a blur of action and emotion. While Nova and Olivia worked frantically in the lab, James and Lyra coordinated the defense of the facility. The Centaurian warriors were methodical, efficient, and utterly ruthless. Everything Lyra and Nova had been taught to be. But the human defenders had something the Centaurians didn't expect: passion. They fought not just with strategy but with heart, protecting not only their facility, but the very idea that emotions were worth preserving. In the lab, Nova's hands trembled as she made delicate adjustments to their device. Olivia worked beside her, their movements synchronized after months of working together. "I've never been so scared," Nova admitted quietly. Olivia paused in her work, looking up at her. "Fear isn't weakness, Nova. It's part of caring about something, or someone, enough to be afraid of losing them." Nova met her gaze, understanding flowing between them. "Is that why my fear feels strongest when I look at you?" Before Olivia could respond, an explosion rocked the lab. The door burst open, and 3 Centaurian warriors stepped through, their neural disruptors raised. "Step away from the device," one ordered in their native tongue. "Your aberration ends now." But in that moment, watching the warriors threaten Olivia, Nova felt something new: rage. Pure, protective fury that surged through her body like electricity. Without thinking, she grabbed the partially modified device and activated it. The effect was instantaneous, but not what anyone expected. Instead of overloading the warriors' emotional suppressors, the device created a feedback loop. The warriors staggered, overwhelmed by their first taste of pure emotion, while Nova and Olivia felt their own emotional connection amplify to almost unbearable levels. Through the facility's comm system, they heard James's voice. "Multiple warriors down. They're crying. Laughing. What's happening?" Lyra's voice came next, thick with wonder. "The device. It's not just removing suppression. It's creating bridges. Emotional resonance between all of us, human and Centaurian alike." In the command center, James and Lyra watched as the effect spread. Centaurian warriors dropped their weapons, overwhelmed by the sudden rush of feelings. Some fell to their knees, touching the earth with trembling hands. Others reached out to the humans nearest them, no longer seeing enemies but fellow-feeling beings. The council ships hung suspended above, their crews experiencing emotion for the first time in generations. The sight of their mighty vessels, motionless in the dawn sky, would be remembered for generations to come. But the battle wasn't over. Even as the warriors struggled with their awakening emotions, the Council's command ship began charging its main weapon. They would rather destroy their own people than allow this emotional awakening to spread. James grabbed Lyra's hand, feeling the warmth of her silver skin against his palm. "Whatever happens next," he said softly, "I want you to know." Lyra pressed her fingers to his lips, her violet eyes shining with tears she was only now learning to shed. "I know. I feel it too. Battle for love." The command ship's weapon continued charging, its crystalline matrix glowing with deadly purpose. In the facility below, James and Lyra raced through corridors filled with the sounds of awakening Centaurian warriors experiencing their first emotions. Some wept, others laughed, but all were transformed by the wave of feeling washing over them. "We need to reach Nova and Olivia," Lyra said as they ran. "The device, if we can amplify its range, we might be able to affect the command ship before they fire." In the lab, Nova and Olivia were already working on the same idea. Their hands moved in perfect synchronization across the device's controls, their shared scientific brilliance enhanced by their emotional connection. The device hummed with increasing power, its crystalline core pulsing with rainbow light. "The power requirements are immense," Olivia warned, her dark eyes fixed on the readings. "If we push it too far, it could burn out completely, or worse." Nova placed her hand over Olivia's. "Some things are worth the risk." The lab door burst open as James and Lyra arrived. Outside, the command ship's weapon had reached critical charge, its light turning the morning sky into artificial noon. They had minutes, perhaps seconds, before it fired. "The council members on that ship," James said, "they're isolated from the effect. Their command center has the strongest emotional suppression fields in our civilization," Lyra explained. They believe it makes their decisions pure, logical, untainted by feeling. But that's exactly why they're wrong. Nova interjected, making final adjustments to the device. Our research proved that emotion doesn't corrupt decision-making. It enhances it. Empathy, compassion, love, these aren't weaknesses. They're evolutionary advantages. The device's hum reached a fever pitch. Olivia's instruments showed power levels far beyond their previous tests. "It's ready," she announced, "but we'll only get one shot at this. The power surge will burn out the crystals." James looked at Lyra, seeing in her silver features everything he had come to love about her. Her courage, her curiosity, her growing capacity for feeling. "Then we make it count." Nova initiated the sequence, and the device released a pulse of energy that made the air itself seem to ripple. The wave expanded outward, washing over the facility and up toward the command ship. As it passed through each person, human and Centaurian alike, it created connections, bridges of shared feeling and understanding. On the command ship's bridge, the council members sat in their isolated chambers, watching their weapon charge. They saw the wave approaching but didn't understand its true nature until it was too late. The enhanced pulse shattered their emotional barriers like glass. Centuries of suppressed feelings crashed through them. Joy, fear, love, anger, a lifetime of emotions experienced in moments. The weapon's targeting systems wavered as its operators staggered under the emotional onslaught. In the lab, the device sparked and sputtered, its crystals cracking under the strain. Nova held Olivia close as they watched their life's work destroy itself to save them all. James and Lyra stood hand in hand, their hearts beating in sync as they waited to see if their gamble would pay off. The command ship's weapon powered down. On every channel, on every frequency, they could hear the sounds of Centaurians experiencing true feeling for the first time in generations. The ship itself seemed to hover uncertainly, its crew too overwhelmed to maintain its threatening position. Then, from the command ship's communications array, a voice spoke. It was Age, trembling with emotion, belonging to the head counselor himself. What is this we're feeling?" Lyra stepped forward, activating the comm system. "It's life, counselor. Real life, with all its beautiful chaos and meaningful connections. It's what we were meant to feel all along." There was a long pause, filled with the sounds of shuddering breaths and quiet sobs. When the counselor spoke again, his voice was different, warmer, more human somehow. "We never knew. All these centuries, we never knew what we were missing." The next hours passed in a blur of activity. The command ship landed, its crew and council members emerging to join their awakened brethren. Humans and Centaurians worked together to treat the few injuries sustained in the brief battle, each interaction strengthening the bonds between their species. In the aftermath, James found Lyra standing in their garden, watching a new sunrise. Her silver skin glowed in the morning light, and her eyes held a depth of feeling that still took his breath away. "What happens now?" he asked softly, taking her hand. She turned to him, a smile transforming her features. "Now we build something new. Not just between us, but between our peoples. The Council has requested our help in safely awakening emotions across Centauri Prime. They want to change their whole society." Just like that. Change was always inevitable, Nova said, joining them with Olivia at her side. "We just needed to feel it was possible." Two worlds unite. 1 year had passed since the day the Centaurian ships descended from the sky. The facility that had once been a secret military installation was now an interstellar cultural center, its halls filled with humans and Centaurians working together to bridge the gap between their civilizations. Lyra stood at a podium in the main conference room, addressing a mixed audience of human and Centaurian scientists. Her silver skin had taken on a subtle iridescence, a physical manifestation of the emotions she now freely expressed. James watched from the front row, still amazed by how far she had come. The integration of emotion into Centaurian society has exceeded all projections, she reported, projecting data streams into the air above her. The gradual awakening program has allowed our people to adapt without the shock we initially experienced. Productivity has increased by 40%, scientific breakthroughs have tripled, and most importantly, our people report a 98% satisfaction rate with their new emotional awareness. Nova and Olivia sat together, their hands intertwined as they reviewed the latest research results on their tablets. They had developed a revolutionary field of study, emotional quantum mechanics, that combined Centaurian technology with human understanding of emotional intelligence. But the numbers tell only part of the story. Lyra continued, her violet eyes scanning the audience. The real change can be seen in the small moments. Centaurian children learning to laugh, couples experiencing love for the first time, families connecting on levels we never knew were possible. After the presentation, the four of them met in their garden, no longer just a place of refuge, but a symbol of how life could flourish in unexpected places. The original butterfly garden had expanded, now featuring both Earth species and their Centaurian counterparts, creating stunning new hybrids that symbolize the union of their worlds. The Council has approved the next phase, Nova announced, watching a luminescent Centaurian moth dance with an Earth butterfly. We're opening the first emotion-integrated university on Centauri Prime next month. They want all four of us to oversee its development. James raised an eyebrow. All four of us. They're allowing humans on Centauri Prime. Not just allowing. Lyra smiled, leaning against him, requesting. They believe the presence of humans will help facilitate emotional learning. And, she hesitated, her expression softening. They've approved interspecies marriages. Olivia gasped, turning to Nova, who was already reaching into a pocket of her ceremonial robe. She pulled out 2 rings, crafted from a combination of Earth gold and Centaurian crystal. We were hoping you two would stand with us at the ceremony, Nova said, sliding one ring onto Olivia's finger. After all, your love helped show us what was possible. James pulled Lyra closer, remembering the day they first met, how far they had come from those initial moments of uncertainty and fear. I think we can arrange that, he said, revealing a ring of his own. As long as you'll do the same for us. The garden filled with joyous laughter, a sound that would have been unimaginable on Centauri Prime just a year ago. Above them, the stars twinkled with new possibility. The same stars that had once seemed cold and distant to Lyra now filled her with wonder and hope. Later that evening, as celebrations wound down, the four of them stood on the facility's roof, watching ships travel between Earth and Centauri Prime through the newly established transit corridor. Each vessel carried scientists, artists, teachers, and families, people from both worlds eager to learn from each other. Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this? Olivia asked, her head resting on Nova's shoulder. When you first started your research? Nova smiled, remembering the sterile labs of Centauri Prime, where they had first dared to question their society's suppression of emotion. We hoped to make a difference. But this, she gestured at the thriving community around them. This is beyond anything we could have dreamed. Lyra stepped to the edge of the roof, pulling James with her. The setting sun painted the sky in colors that still took her breath away, even after a year of Earth sunsets. Our exile was meant to be a punishment, she said softly. Instead, it gave us everything we never knew we needed. Love has a way of doing that, James replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. It turns endings into beginnings, strangers into family, and distant worlds into homes. As night fell, more stars became visible in the darkening sky, but they no longer represented cold points of navigation or distant astronomical objects. To the humans and Centaurians watching from below, they were bridges between worlds, pathways to understanding, and reminders that even in the vast expanse of space, hearts could find each other. The story of 2 exiled sisters had become a legend on both worlds, a testament to the power of love to transform not just individuals, but entire civilizations. And in gardens across 2 worlds, butterflies and moths danced together under alien skies, their wings shimmering with the promise of possibilities yet to come.